The first balance report of the new patch is in. Protoss neutered while Zerg dominates? Really? I feel like I have not seen Zerg win that much, but apparently Zerg is now on top of the list? Huh. This may prove once again that your gut instinct is generally speaking incorrect. Here we go. This is the balance report on Aligulac. So this is a website that keeps track of all of the games that are being played at a professional level. Oh, they gave you a different... Aha! The graph they posted over here is the performance difference graph, but the one that people usually look at is the balance report graph. This is the difference compared to the previous set of data. And the data is calculated once a month. So compared to last month, Zerg is doing much better and Protoss is doing worse, and Terran is doing a little bit better too. But that is to be expected. This kind of reads, if you're just going to post this flat graph over here, it kind of reads as if Zerg is dominating. Protoss neutered while Zerg dominates. Yeah, okay. That is not entirely fair. Alright, so here's the actual win-loss ratio for the month of October. Protoss versus Zerg. Protoss is winning 56% of the games. That's on a sample size of 601 games. Terran versus Zerg. Terran is winning 53% of the games. Meaning that Zerg is losing both against Protoss as well as against Terran. Protoss versus Terran is at 50.3% in favor of Protoss. So this guy that got a freaking threat at the very top of the StarCraft 2 subreddit is insinuating that Zerg is currently overpowered and that Protoss is no longer playable. But if you look at the actual numbers here, Zerg is getting somewhat less, admittedly, but Zerg is still getting wrecked against both Protoss as well as Terran. Now, obviously, you gotta take these numbers with a grain of salt as per usual. The big difference here with the balance report that always makes everything a little bit messy is that the top-level Terrans, they play in everything. Clem plays in tournaments every day. Beyond plays in tournaments every day. Cure plays in tournaments every day. Maru doesn't, but a lot of the top-tier Terrans do. Same for the top-tier Protosses. You have guys like Hero, guys like Classic, guys like MaxSpec. They play in everything. And then for the highest-ranked Zergs, they don't play. I mean, Serral has played like 2 games in October in a tournament, and both of them were pretty much irrelevant. Raynor did play in a couple. I would say the most frequently seen Zerg, probably, in October at a high level is Solar. I feel like Solar has been playing in quite a few. We've seen Shin a little bit. We've seen Rogue a little bit too, but the absolute cream of the crop of the Zergs, no disrespect to the ones I just mentioned. Obviously, they're still phenomenally good, but this is data without games of Serral, right? So if you were to take the number 1 performing Protoss and the number 1 performing Terran out of the data set here, I wonder how much that would shift. It probably would shift quite a lot. Yeah, then again, the absolute number of games is quite high. So for Protoss versus Zerg, apparently 601 tournament games were played. 964 games of PVT. That's a lot as well. All right, let's read the comments. And yes, the performance graph takes into account ELO rankings. So if Classic beat Neuro 10 times and loses to Young Yakov once, the win graph will show PvZ being Protoss favored, while the performance graph will show Zerg favored, which is an accurate conclusion in this scenario. Yeah, but why would you post this graph? Why would you not post the other one? Why would you only post the one? I know why. This will not mute a single Protoss hater. How exactly is performance difference determined? ELO is taken into account, doesn't really say much. It is honestly a pretty a very complex system. You can look at the FAQ on Aligulac, and I honestly don't understand all of it. Basically, I look at this and I'm like, yep, this was definitely come up by some smart people. And we will trust the way that they do their stuff. No, you gotta always take it with a grain of salt. But this has been by far the most reasonable estimation as far as balance goes that we've had over all the years. This is all the way from 2010. Isn't that crazy? So apparently Terran versus Zerg in 2010 was 67% in favor of Terran. You know the meta? Remember the meta back in August of 2010? Remember the 5 Rex Reaper build that didn't have a counter? It's a long time ago, but I remember. And then over here, we had the meta as well at the end of Wings of Liberty. So end of 2020, or end of 2012 and then beginning of 2013, when Broodlord Infestor was considered to be pretty much unbeatable. And then Zerg got shafted, and again we got back to this. It's kind of funny, right? Seeing all the graphs over time. So this is Protoss versus Terran over time. Yeah. And then this is Protoss versus Zerg over time. So general goal for these numbers, if we look at it since about 2023, is for this to be obviously as close to the 50% line as possible. That would mean that in the non-mirror matchups, both races are winning an equal amount. So if you just look at this data alone, you would say that Zerg is probably... So there's a few things, right? When you discuss balance, like you can look at the absolute win-loss ratio, and that's fine. But I also think across the board, Zerg is just very defensive at the moment. Like at the highest level, the vast majority of games with Zerg are people sitting back and waiting to get to a place where they can actually fight. And I kind of miss the more aggressive styles that were more viable back in the day. So even if like these numbers are at exactly 50%, right, which is not really realistic, but even if you were to be able to get them exactly at 50%, like for example November 2024, that was pretty dang close. That doesn't necessarily mean that the game is like perfectly balanced, because it might still just have no fun. And I think optimizing for fun is probably also very important. Not as easy to plot though in a graph. Are you actually just posting? Okay, so somebody is calling him out here. Are you actually just posting the absolute difference without mentioning from where they started? Look how freaking high Protoss was before the patch. That doesn't fit the narrative that Zerg is Giga dead. It's not Giga dead, no. That's obviously also stupid, right? You don't have to talk in extremes. Everything's always very black and white on Reddit, I've noticed. I guess it's because of the upvote system. Like, either people agree or they don't, but... Going by this, the game is in its most balanced spot it's been in years? No. So this is not interpreting the data correctly. Because if you were to look at, like, the 50% line, right? This technically would have been, so about a year ago, exactly 1 year ago, Protoss versus Zerg was at 51%, Protoss versus Terran at 49%, Terran versus Zerg at 48%. That would technically be better. Obviously, the patch is also very new. I think especially when the patch was first introduced. So that is effectively early October, right? That's when like the patch really was live. I think Terrans were dancing in the storm a lot. Like you could tell that the top level Terrans had a mental note on how long Storm was supposed to last, and then they would always dance a little bit too long inside of the Psy Storm. I feel like in the recent games of Terran versus Protoss I've seen, Terran is looking way better again. Like, Clem especially was really struggling about a month ago, and now he's actually looking very comfy again. So, obviously, again, it's just a small sample size, right? But TVZ, I think TVZ is interesting right now, but I kind of... As silly as, like, the Cyclones were, I think it's a bit lame that mech is currently completely not viable, it seems. I kind of miss Terran mech as just like a proper strategy you can do. Plus, I think Zerg is way too much of a punching bag in TVZ. Like, there is basically no early game aggression that's really viable at a high level. We see it every once in a while, but not quite at the absolute highest level. And I kind of miss that. Zerg doesn't really seem to have a lot of timing attacks. I was hoping that the Microbial Shroud change was going to introduce some of those, but then they locked the Microbial Shroud upgrade behind a research, which I still think is unnecessary. I think now that we have played it for a month, I think they can remove the research and just give Microbial Shroud to the Infestor by default, because then you might have some, like, Hydra Infestor timing attacks. That'd be kind of cool. Like, you don't really have timing attacks at the moment, it seems. We have seen in Protoss versus Zerg, we have seen some Zergs going for, like, Queen drops again, and some, like, Hydraling Bane pushes at a reasonable time. But I think, I would have liked to see Microbial Shroud be, like, a viable strat as a timing attack, rather than, like, another late-game option. Like, Zerg has a lot of really good late-game. I kind of feel like Zerg is, like, early game, punching bag, mid-game, punching bag, late game, zoop, suddenly you can be the aggressor. I don't think that's ideal. Yeah, they could make the Infestation Pit faster to build. They could just remove the research altogether. Like, it's 100 minerals, 100 gas, and it takes like 100 seconds. The upgrade is very expensive. Plus, when you finally get the Infestors out, Microbial Shroud is 100 energy, meaning that, like, the Infestors need to be out for a long while before you can actually use Microbial Shroud. And in the previous version of Microbial Shroud, it would, like, stick to units, but they've taken that away too. It has so much cool potential, but it's just barely not there at the moment. Like, we're like one change away from Microbial Shroud being way overpowered. And then, well, it being the only thing Zergs will ever do. But at the moment, I don't think it's really worth playing that much. Considering Protoss always does better in early stages, Protoss is undertuned this way, I would say. I don't think that's entirely true anymore. Protoss used to do better at the beginning of patches because Protoss was very gimmicky. And when the gimmicks were figured out by the opponents, that sort of sorted it out. But I think these days Protoss is not nearly as gimmicky as they used to be. I think Protoss is actually pretty darn good these days. Like, a straight up macro, very viable. We used to see, like, Hero, for example, come up with, like, some cheese, and then nobody knew what to do against it, and then over time people figured it out. I will say that the ghost changes are honestly too good. Like, a few years ago, we had all determined that ghosts were way overpowered. And they made them from 2 supply to 3 supply. And now with this new patch, they reduced them again from 3 supply to 2 supply. They gave the ghost 25 additional HP. But then to counteract both of those massive buffs, they made them more vulnerable to light. Which is almost irrelevant because of the HP increase. So it's just basically a straight up buff to 2 supply again. I don't really know why. I find it a little bit weird. I do agree that ghosts probably should be 2 supply just because it makes sense in my head. But yeah, now for example, you can't even kill a ghost with a disruptor bolt. Like, you can't even one-shot a ghost with a disruptor. What is... why? I don't get it. It's silly. In other words, the current spread is extremely tight and the game became much more balanced than before. Yes. Protoss neutered while Zerg dominates. It's so silly, man. There's so many people that will only read the headline, right? And just not... Looks like a solid improvement. Okay. So you would agree then that Protoss has been massively overpowered for the vast majority of the last 2 years? Fuck off, my win rate against Protoss is 40% and I'm playing the game since 10 years, so really, shut the fuck off. Yeah, we only look at balance for the pro level, because it's really the only part that matters. I know it kind of sucks, but say you're a Platinum League hero and you're losing in TVZ, it's probably not because of balance. It's the same for my games. Like, my games are irrelevant. If you are below, like, top 100 Grandmaster, I think balance is not that significant for the outcome of your games. And that includes me. I was told the Zerg pros couldn't be bothered with $200 weeklies and that the race went extinct. It's really hard to say where Zerg is currently at. It's really quite difficult to say. I don't really know. Until Serral decides to pop in again. Because Serral, if you look at Aligulac, so Aligulac also keeps track of all the games being played. Serral played 2 games. I tried getting the replays for them, but apparently the tournament organizer is unable to share them, which is fine. But anyways, he played 2 games. And actually, he played a few more apparently. Okay, fair. Yeah, I can't get the replays for this particular event, but he's won against Jumi and Harstem. So those are the 2 results I saw. I was like, okay, that's not really, you know, no disrespect to Harstem and Jumi, but that's not really an upset. 3-0 against Cure. Also not really an upset, although I do think Cure's Terran versus Zerg is really good. Clems, okay, 1-0 win over Serral. Fine. I don't think that's really a particularly big upset either. Although I'd have to see the games to really get like the real intel, but Raynor was playing a bunch at the beginning of the patch. I don't really know if he is right now. I haven't really seen him play too much lately, although he did play apparently today too. Alright, he has been playing. Just not in tournaments that I have got the replays for, I guess, just yet. Maybe I'll be able to get some of them. Is this the same event? Yeah, it is the same event. Okay. Okay. So that is from the Lilu Cup. Alright. Pretty hype, by the way. As of like a few days ago, the Chinese server is back online again in StarCraft 2, which is something that wasn't the case for years and years and years. And tournament organizers from China, like for example Lulu, I never know how to pronounce it. They were already hosting a couple of events, but not nearly as many. Like basically for a while, like 50% of the games that I was casting were hosted by Chinese tournament organizers because they hosted a shit ton, which was really cool. But then obviously their server got shut down, and they were like, "Yo, no, we're not supporting this," which you can't really blame them for. And then apparently Blizzard now recently managed to get a deal again with the whole publishing thingamajig in China. They already did so some time ago, I think, for World of Warcraft, where the WoW servers came back online. And now, apparently, the StarCraft 2 server is back online, too. So if you go to the game, there is an option over here to switch to China. Now, I've tried it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work if you're in Europe. But for some reason, the option to switch to it is there. Yeah, you have to be in China, I think, to play on the Chinese server. And I think, likewise, they are not really able anymore to play as easily on the other servers now. Anyways, with them being back, though, we may very well get a whole lot more tournaments added into the mix, which would be super cool. But we'll see. Why did they shut down the Chinese servers in the first place? I don't really know the specifics, but I believe that if you are a game publisher and you want to publish your game in China, you have to get a specific license within China. And if you are not able to get one through whatever system, you are unable to publish your game in China. And Blizzard had some sort of, I think, a disagreement or misunderstanding or whatever. But basically, they had to take every single game out of China. Which, for obvious reasons, for StarCraft, I mean, I'm sure they didn't care that much. But for games like World of Warcraft, Overwatch, whatever, like, they obviously really want that for one of the biggest markets in the entire world. So, some time ago, like, they shut down all of the servers in China. There were some really sad videos online of people that, like, played their World of Warcraft account for, like, a decade plus. And they just, like, spent the last few minutes of the servers being live in Stormwind, in Orgrimmar, basically looking at the final time they can play the game. It was honestly really sad. But apparently now everything is back online again. Yeah, the Chinese games usually do have like a couple of different things too. I believe in like World of Warcraft, for example, the skulls and like skeletons and stuff are replaced. Like I think a lot of skulls are replaced with bread. I believe they're replaced with loaves of bread. I don't really know. Anyways, game publishing is weird and a little bit difficult sometimes. But yeah, it does mean that the Chinese server is back online, and they did announce. SC boy, let me see if I can find this. Give me 1 second. They did announce that they are hosting a pretty dang big tournament again. Let me see. Yeah. Yes, our server is back. So this has been live since the 28th of October. And then they announced this tournament over here too. So the official announcement, SCBoy and NetEase will hold an offline event at the Hangzhou Esports Center from November 29th to 30th. So that's going to be the end of November, which is pretty cool too. But basically it was also kind of an unlucky timing if I recall correctly. Like it's been a little while now, but like the Chinese server got shut down and then Oliveira decided to retire. So Oliveira, obviously previous world champion of StarCraft, the absolute best player that China has ever had for StarCraft 2. Like those two things, I think, sort of happened around the same time frame. So, you know, if you are dumping a lot of money into a passion project that very likely is not making you a financial return, and then, you know, those two things happen, you're like, why? Why would I keep? But maybe they're back now, so... Anyways, balance seems to be headed in the right direction. I wouldn't mind it if they decide to, like, change some things again. Maybe make Microbial Shroud a bit better. But that's mostly because of fun, not because of balance. And it seems like balance is headed in the right direction compared to where it was a few months ago. Yeah, I would like to see some underutilized things be more powerful. Like, for example, I would love to see battle cruisers. We never see battle cruisers. I would love to see swarm hosts. We never see swarm hosts. Is there a Protoss unit that we don't see much? No, Protoss units are all pretty darn good. Is there a Protoss unit that is underutilized? No, they're all good, aren't they? I would like Phoenix openers to be more prevalent again. I kind of miss Phoenixes in both. Well, we see them every once in a while, I guess, in PvT now. But I would like them to be a little bit more prevalent in PvZ. Yeah, you could make Disruptors a bit better, I think. But buffing Protoss in PvT especially is a bit sketchy. Because there's already so much splash damage for Protoss in PvT. We'll see.